Yes, come on. Okay, we're live. We're back. I am back, but I'm playing the host chair now. Ian and Dwayne are gone. It is just me, Andrew Erickson. I'm on Twitter at Andrew Erickson _. Now joined by PFF Jared Evans, social media guru, GPP extraordinaire, Derrick Henry Fader. I guess we'll find out. Derrick Henry Fader. Jared, I know we missed last week. I'm sorry, people. I had a wedding I had to go to. I had to miss the DFS stream, unfortunately. But we're back. Talk some DFS strategy. We have all the injury news. So if you missed out on the injury report updates, we just reviewed all of them. So go check it out either on YouTube or on the channel as well. Jared, are you ready for week 4? I like a lot of the plays this week, and that kind of sucks because like that usually is not a good thing when there's a lot of good options. It seems like you can play a really good team, but then someone just plays a better team than you.
Yeah, I know. This is definitely going to be a fun slate for sure. The way that I've been approaching it right now is I think there's like 5 games with totals above 50. And I think that is kind of where I want to narrow my player pool just so I don't feel like I have the need to play every single really good player. Try to like target these games with shootout potential and then build my rosters out with that as the backdrop.
Yeah, I find that when you start to in the process of building lineups, if you're building multiple lineups, and when you start to like talk about how you're covering all your bases, it's like, okay, you probably should stop. like that, because you're never going to be able to do it. Like you think you're covering all your bases, but you're not. And that just means you're just making more lineups. Chances are just making more bad lineups. And this doesn't necessarily help. So have a cutoff, use the DFS optimizer if you want to make it, punch out 150 lineups. I know Jared is a big fan of the optimizer. So yeah, I mean, hit him up if you have questions about how to use it. I'm sure that Jared would be more than happy to help people out, help the PFF followers out with that DFS optimizer. Let's get into the nitty gritty here. Quarterback position. I like Dak Prescott a lot. I know that Ian likes Josh Allen a lot. I know there's a couple Galaxy brain quarterbacks, but it seems like the main thing with quarterback has basically just been you need to pay up and you get a quarterback. Like all the tournaments I've played in, you look at the top, it's the same guys. It's Mahomes, it's Allen, it's Murray, a couple 6K guys kind of filling as well. Stafford was really good last week. Brady. Is that kind of the same strategy that you're going to go with this week? You pay up a quarterback in tournaments, and then obviously if you try to find value in cash as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still licking my wounds after playing Justin Fields all over the place
Yes.
last
Thank
week.
God we did not have the stream last week. We would have been touting Fields and we would have lost people way more money.
Oh my God. Yeah, what a disaster. At least I played him naked in a lot of spots, so I was able to salvage some min cashes because I just stacked up the Rams and Bucks. So yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with these expensive quarterbacks. The one that you didn't mention that I was kind of looking at is Kyler Murray in that Rams Cardinals game. That game has the highest total on the entire slate, and then Stafford going the other direction. The Cardinals defense is not that great. And then I know you mentioned Dak, and I wonder if the Panthers and Cowboys both actually have like good defenses, and if that game could kind of go the way of the Chargers Cowboys game. Of the high totals games, that was the one that seemed a little riskier to me. But I mean, I love the Dak play, and obviously you know who to pair him with in Cooper and Lamb. But yeah, paying up at quarterback is definitely the move, I think.
Yeah, I just like the strategy because it's so easy to double stack Dak. Cooper and Lamb are both under 7K. We saw what he could do against a offense or against the defense in week 1 when they just all smashed and they were all amazing plays. I think Dak is just really underpriced. So at 6,700, I know Carolina's defense has been good against bad defenses, and Dak Prescott was really, really great against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I still like him. He pops out as just kind of a great value at 6,700. So if you don't have the 8K to pay up for Josh Allen, and also the roster chip's not there either for him too. I know quarterback, it doesn't matter as much, but he really stood out to me just based on his price and kind of where we've seen guys similarly priced to him, similar type of expected fantasy points. He's 4th in expected fantasy points per game this season. So he's actually kind of underperformed. Same along with goes with Lamb and Cooper. So that is why I like him. But yeah, it's tough because we're splitting hairs, a lot of these elite quarterbacks, but chances are you do need to hit on the right one for the most part. And sometimes they all hit, and it's just kind of what happens with the rest of your lineup. But the main takeaway is you do want to move up at the quarterback position. pick your favorite guy, and also work around and be open to moving off quarterbacks if you can build a better lineup with someone else. If you're moved down for, okay, so like you have Josh Allen locked in with Diggs, but then you realize, okay, well, if I actually go to Kyler Murray, I can do this and this, and I actually like that better. So be open. Again, a lot of these quarterbacks have very similar ceilings. Obviously, the runners are a little more expensive because they do have higher ceilings, but I definitely get that. So Josh Allen, do you like him as well? I know that, I mean, the huge total. I know people can be concerned about well, they're going to blow him out and they're going to stop throwing, which I think is just a terrible narrative to be attached to because we don't know. It's like, if you're going to talk about them, like, why don't you just bet the lines on the games? Like, if you know what's going to happen in these games, then you should just bet the spread or do that, which we all know is way more difficult than playing DFS.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Josh Allen's a great play. Stephon Diggs is also just due for a blowout game. You know it's coming, and it could definitely be this week. I mean, DJ Moore just hit them for 100 yards. Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen's a great play, and even if the Bills blow out the Texans, I think it's like a 17-point spread, but somebody is gonna have to be scoring all the fantasy points if the Bills go up by like 3 or 4 touchdowns by the end of the third quarter. Like that means that Josh Allen has already scored 4 touchdowns, most likely. So yeah, no, Allen's a good play. And I'd stack them up with Diggs.
Yeah, so rostership percentages we got early in the week. We have Allen first, and then coming in second is Mahomes, Stafford, Kyler Murray's next, and then Dak, Garoppolo, and Russell Wilson are kind of like the lower owned plays. I'm not playing Garoppolo. Sorry, it's not happening. Yeah, Russ is pretty low owned because he's dealing with some injuries. Lockett's kind of banged up. I'm actually kind of concerned about Lockett in general. I don't know if I can play him because we've seen him play banged up before and he's never been good. He's like literally been a decoy. So I think that's important with DK Metcalf to play him naked, even without Russ, or stack him up.
Banged up too.
Yeah. So Russell, like, I know we get excited about this NFC West, but it would not surprise me at all if I turn on the TV and see, oh God, it's 7-3 at halftime. Like what? It's just like, the game duds out because these teams know each other, and sometimes that happens with divisional teams. Like they just don't shoot out the way you think. Obviously, not every shootout happens, so that clearly the field is not as high on Russ as some of those other top tier quarterbacks. But Stafford is interesting at 7K because he doesn't run. So is he someone? And he was obviously the big play last week. Obviously, Murray kind of disappointed. Mahomes was kind of disappointing as the most expensive quarterback. But I prefer Josh Allen to Mahomes straight up anyway. So I don't think I'll find the 200 to pay up for Mahomes as opposed to Allen. Stafford potentially a guy you would fade at his price 7K because he doesn't have the rushing that a guy like Murray or Allen does, and you're willing to find the money to get up to those guys.
No, I think you can definitely play Stafford. Again, so important. And to pair him with Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods or Tyler Higbee. And like we've seen Tom Brady do this. Like he's always priced like that high 6K, low 7K range. And he has no rushing upside, but he's in tournament winning lineups all the time in these shootouts. The other two guys that you didn't mention, Jalen Hurts is interesting, obviously, as a runner in that game against the Chiefs. Mahomes is going to put up a ton of points. And like,
I'm afraid.
It looks ugly. It looks ugly, but you don't have to watch that game. You can just close your eyes. Don't have to open up the DraftKings app, and then afterwards, Jalen Hurts will have his 28, fantasy points, and you're golden.
And then
if
you want to play, go ahead.
No. If you have a Hurts thing, I can bring it up after.
No. I'm done with Hurts. You can.
You're done with Hurts.
I'm afraid, dude. I'm literally. He got by last week on garbage time, but that's not something you could bank on every single week. And I could see them just going into Kansas City and just getting shellacked. I could definitely see that. Or actually, no, it's at home, so maybe not as much, but the Chiefs need to put a beating on someone. It seems like the Eagles are the next victim.
Hey, whatever. I mean, I don't doubt it, but Hurts is the king of garbage time, so it's fine.
Yep.
And then the other one is Aaron Rodgers. If he's going to come in low owned, and Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams stack is always juicy. MVS this week. Steelers have a good defense, but Aaron Rodgers can throw 4 touchdowns and 350 yards on anybody. Doesn't matter the matchup. So that's definitely something I'm going to be interested in at low ownership.
2 of the lower cornerbacks I like as well. I like Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield just has random games where he throws for like 5 touchdowns, and the Vikings defense is bad. Odell Beckham is going to be very popular, and no one's going to play his quarterback. Like that just kind of happens. Sometimes we just fixate on we know the great wide receiver play, but we don't even think about their quarterback. I know a lot of people like Kirk Cousins a little bit. Just play Mayfield instead. I think Mayfield he's overdue for touchdowns, like passing touchdowns, whereas Kirk Cousins has thrown way too many passing touchdowns to keep it up. And then if you really want to just go cheap quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, he runs. He's a cheap quarterback, 5,100. He's cheap and he runs too. So I think that's an interesting. If you want the rushing, I think Brissett is someone that I wrote up in the DFS cheat sheet. Check it out on pff.com. I wrote up Brissett because he was pretty good expected fantasy points last week. And I'm not afraid of this Colts defense. #revenge game for Jacoby Brissett. So
revenge. Yes.
It's a lot of revenge games this week. You stack them with Will Fuller, man. It's a match made in heaven. Let's get into the running back position. All right. Just hit off big dog, Derrick Henry. The Titans currently have no wide receivers, and Derrick Henry should probably touch the ball 35 times, and they're playing the Jets, who have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs. Jared, why in my wildest dreams would I think to fade Derrick Henry? The floor is yours.
It's tough, man, because in these Derrick Henry chalk weeks of previous years, you could say, well, if the Titans randomly fall behind, Derrick Henry's not going to get any targets.
But he's going to get the targets now.
So the logic behind fading Derrick Henry is definitely not as strong as it may have been in previous years. But having said that, weird things happen in the NFL every time. The Jaguars were up 14-0 last night over the Bengals at halftime. Like, who the hell expected that to happen? So I definitely think that there are ways that you can build your lineup maybe around the Jets-Titans game disappointing. I think that you could also just like play one of the other expensive running backs instead of Derrick Henry that are going to come in with significantly lower rostership, like Kamara, Dalvin Cook, or Aaron Jones even, because all those guys have the same ceiling as Henry. But man, I am struggling. I think I might have to play some Henry this week. Usually I'm like, whatever, I can fade him. If he buries me, then so be it. Because the times you want to play Derrick Henry.
I want to have a nice Sunday. Like I'm going to the Patriots game. I want to not. I don't want to watch Derrick Henry rush for 200 yards against the New York Jets and not have him on my team and just get absolutely buried.
No.
It's just, I think you hit the nail on the head with the targets. Like he has more catches than Alvin Kamara. It's a fact. Like it's crazy. And we're seeing this all the time with these teams that just lack wide receiver talent. They just focus on the better players. The better players just get the ball more. It's not Nick Westbrook or Cameron Batson or friggin' Marcus Johnson that are going to step up and see 10 targets in this game. Like Derrick Henry could have a career high in carries and targets in this game because what do you think? What do you think their game plan is? Derrick Henry. That's the offensive game plan. It's him. So I think especially I think you could have made an argument even more to fade him if AJ Brown and Julio were healthy, because you'd be like, okay, they get it through the air with Ryan Tannehill. Okay, I can buy that, but I'm not buying that he's going to do it with the receivers he has at his disposal. He's already their featured piece when those guys are healthy, and now if those guys are gone, I think it's really tough to get off Derrick Henry. Dalvin Cook would probably be my choice because he's coming off the injury, but every time we've seen Dalvin Cook play, he's the guy. They don't play him halfway speed. They don't inch him back into work. They've always, when he's been coming off injuries, because he's been banged up, a lot during his career. Whenever he comes back and plays, he is good to go, and he's the bell cow. So I like Dalvin Cook as a pivot, depending on how his ownership shakes out. So that's kind of really the top tier guys. A lot of the other ones, Jones, Nick Chubb, have some tougher matchups or they're in committees or whatever, something like that. I know that there's a lot of attractive running backs in the 6K range. I think Najee Harris is a really good cash play. Again, I mean, probably in tournaments too, just because the volume is so significant with him as a pass catcher and as a running back. Is there anyone that sticks out to you? I mean, for me, DeAndre Swift just sticks out like a sore thumb. They're just not moving his price, and he's coming in really low rostered for our projections. I don't know if that's going to stick based on all the coach rhetoric we've heard, but I mean, Swift, 6,200, I love. And Jonathan Taylor at 6,300, I love as well.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see Swift's projected rostership coming in so low. When I was writing up my article this week on Blink, what I'm thinking for these tournaments, reasons you said Dan Campbell's like, we need to feature him or keep feeding him, give him a bigger role. Other running backs in the mid range I was looking at, Chuba Hubbard, I'm at 5.9K, let's see, but he's got probably the Christian McCaffrey role, or 80% of the Christian McCaffrey role. And that game has a high total. So I think he's definitely a viable play. David Montgomery is interesting against the Lions defense, which is not that great, and he's going to get a ton of work. I also think Darrell Henderson coming back off the injury is a strong play, especially if you're kind of building rosters around Josh Allen or some of the other expensive quarterbacks that are not Matt Stafford and Kyler Murray. Or I guess you could play Kyler and Henderson together, but if you're considering fading Stafford, Kupp, and Woods, then Darrell Henderson is a really interesting leverage piece because you're basically hoping that the touchdowns come on the ground.
Yeah, it's Darrell Henderson. At first glance, I'm like, man, I know that he's probably not going to have the same bell cow role, coming off the injury. Michelle looked good last week, so I was kind of concerned about, but then I thought about it more. I'm like, you know what? Even if Henderson is in, even if it's like a 60-40 split, like the matchup is there for one of these running backs to just like pop off, a big run or two against the Cardinals that just been really bad against running backs so far this season. So even in like a split, like I don't even know if he necessarily needs to see like the 80% snap share that he saw in week 1 and week 2 when he was the guy. So yeah, I'm more on Henderson than I was initially when I found out that he was going to be active. I was like, oh, gross. Like I was in on like playing Michelle if Michelle was just the only guy, but I think it makes sense off the injury. I mean, that's the easiest way to get guys that are low rostered is they're coming off injuries when so we don't really know the status of them. Could he obviously, split the committee with Michelle and then they both are terrible? Yeah, it's possible. But in tournaments, this is where you can get an edge. And we also don't know. He could get the bell call roll back. Like that's not out of the range of outcomes either, where it's like similar into Minnesota, where when Dalvin Cook plays, he's the guy. And maybe the way that the Rams have showed us their running backs, they've had one running back be the guy so far this year. So it could change, obviously. But if that's the popular opinion that it's going to change, then I think it makes sense to go the other way and be like, well, we don't actually know that. We're just kind of guessing. So I'm willing to go the other direction. So I do like Henderson more as a tournament play now that we kind of know his status that he'll probably play. Even if he is playing splitting, there's a path. I mean, especially too because Chase Edmonds is splitting time too. Like you're kind of paying for a potential split in the backfield anyway at 5,600. So I think the price point is really, really nice for a guy like Henderson. I mean, he's cheaper than Tony Pollard.
Yeah. That's a nice little running back combo there. Henderson and Edmonds on the same roster. Maybe throw a little
It's
Kyler
cheap,
in there.
dude. I think that's interesting because it gets you off of those two quarterbacks. If you don't play either of the quarterbacks, like, for example, I like Dak a lot. So if I play those two cheaper like running backs, okay, let's say they just all the touchdowns score on the ground. And then boom, like the Josh Allen lineups are dust, the Murray lineups are dust, and I have Dak. Oh, but this is working out perfectly. So yes, great call there, Jared. Cheap running backs. Anybody kind of stick? I mean, Zach Moss, I think, is interesting as a touchdown guy off of Josh Allen. Cordero Patterson is like the RB7 the last 2 weeks because he has 7 targets in the last 2 games. Mike Davis is like popping in every single projection. Every single optimizer, Mike Davis is like, play me so hard, which is just kind of interesting. Any other running backs you're like must play? I mean, for me, like I really like Swift and Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's going to pop off one of these weeks. It like has to happen. Is there any running back that you're like first click that you haven't mentioned that you want, or is it just those guys you talked about?
Yeah, the sub 5K range is pretty ugly. I don't know if I can play any Atlanta Falcons at this point, so I don't know how I feel about Davis or Patterson. I mean, Javonte Williams is interesting if Melvin Gordon ends up missing. I know he's banged up also. I'm definitely not playing the Kyle Shanahan running back roulette wheel, regardless of what happens with Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're just literally, we talked about the injury pod where we're just like the way they're treating Mitchell's like, hey, like he's gonna be the guy, like no matter what, like we're giving him the football till he breaks in half, and then they don't want to use Trey Sermon at all. Like they're like, We'll use Juszczyk. We'll use literally anybody else except Trey Sermon. Like, we don't want him to play. So, yeah, Mitchell, you just don't know how long he's going to last. Like, he get 15 carries and just like fall apart because his shoulder's going to fall off. But yeah, I think that there are other plays that you can make that are a little bit better. I will mention I Saquon Barkley, I think, is interesting because of all the injuries at the receiver position. I know we had 7 targets last week. You know, he was at 80% snap share. Like, he's still under 7K, and he's seeing snaps like the top guys above 8K. So playing the Saints, nobody's going to want to touch him because the Saints have a good defense, but Barkley has the receiving upside. Like, and I think that he's probably, I mean, maybe he does have a lot of explosiveness to his game. We know he's an elite talent. So I like Saquon Barkley there as well. Let's get into receivers. Talk about, all right, we're not stopping at the top either. We're starting all the way at the bottom at the Stone Min. Curtis Samuel, 3K, mispriced, big mistake by DraftKings. He's on the IR still, and I understand why they just kind of forgot to like reprice him because they didn't think he was probably going to play in this game. So with Curtis Samuel, Jared, what is the game theory behind the approach with a receiver that's 3K that is a starter that could potentially be on a snap count, but even if he plays 50% of the snaps, I mean, that's more than anyone else would play at 3K. So what's the move on Samuel if he becomes really chalky? You want some exposure to him? Is he a total fade? What are your thoughts on Curtis Samuel? Jared's frozen. Uh-oh. Jared, can you hear me?
Gonna be full go.
Okay, here we go.
We're back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it seems like Samuel is going to be full go. And if he's going to have a ton of snaps at 3K in an awesome matchup, I mean, you just got to love that. You just got to play smart around him. Like, you can't just plug in Curtis Samuel and Derrick Henry on every lineup with like Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. Like, you just can't build rosters like that because you're going to have an identical roster to everybody else in these contests. So I would just be wary of that. But man, he looks like a good play. I drafted a ton of Curtis Samuel in best ball, so I'm thrilled that he's going to be back.
Boom. Love it. Curtis Samuel, lock him in. I mean, I think he's probably a lock in cash lineups at 3K. Because, yeah, he can literally bust. Like, he doesn't even have to do that much, and you're still getting a return on just the upside of him being a full-time player. I mean, if he scores 15 points, like, you're freaking thrilled. Like, there's no one else in the 3K range. I think that him also being at 3K, I think it makes it easier to go away from, I know, like the Titans, some of the Titans receivers, some of the Colts the Titans receivers, some of the other like low price Giants wide receivers. Like, we're getting some steam because of all the injuries, but I think Curtis Samuel is just like, I mean, hands down the better play out of all those guys. So would stay away from the Colin Johnsons, the Nick Westbrooks of the world. So that's what I would stick towards right there. Going back up to the top, Jared, who do you want? Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Diggs. I know you mentioned Diggs. I think this is a Diggs blow-up game, right?
Oh, it definitely could be. Yeah, he's due. The wide receiver quarterback matchup chart loves Diggs this week. So I'm definitely going to play some of Diggs. I mean, it all depends what quarterbacks I end up playing. Like, if I end up with Aaron Rodgers rosters, I want Devontae Adams, Stafford, Kupp. Like, you know, it's going to be trying to build these game stacks and then kind of work my receivers around it. And something that worked last week was the Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf correlation from the same game. So I think looking for players that you can build these like mini game stacks with, especially at the receiver position, make a lot of sense. You have some really good options this week. Like, you could go Calvin Ridley and Curtis Samuel or Terry McLaurin. You can go CeeDee Lamb and DJ Moore. There's a lot of really good receivers that you can kind of just like play together as a package, which I kind of like. OBJ and Justin Jefferson or Thielen, like there's some good correlations here this week.
OBJ is the best play, I think, by far.
No arguments here.
5,800 led the team in air yard share last week, target share. I'm gonna make a TikTok about him tomorrow, so pray that he just doesn't get hurt. Like, because of course the TikTok just just obliterates players whenever I make videos about them. So, but one guy that kind of popped out to me that kind of stood out a little bit was KJ Osborne. That kind of stood out. He didn't have a great week last week. He kind of fell up to expectations, but he's still playing a very significant amount of snaps in terms of route participation. He's way undervalued in terms of versus Thielen and Jefferson, who are pay up options. So I think that a sneaky way to attack Cleveland, Minnesota is actually OBJ and KJ Osborne. You look at the Cleveland Browns, this is something that I kind of took away from last night. The Jaguars play a lot of cover 3 scheme or the cover 3 defense, so a lot of zone. And Tyler Boyd, you saw him eat. Like Tyler Boyd was just getting peppered with targets as the slot receiver. KJ Osborne has been playing the slot for the Minnesota Vikings. And the Cleveland Browns are one of the more heavy cover 3 defenses in the NFL. So Osborne, we've already seen him pop before. So it's not like I'm going out on this super limb with a player that has never produced. I mean, he's been good in 2 out of 3 games. And it gets you off of more popular players like Jefferson, like an Adam Thielen, and lets you. It's a unique way to stack Odell Beckham and get exposure to a game that should feature some points scored in it. So that's some of my lower guys. I think he's at 3,700 or 3,600. 3,700. Yeah, KJ Osborne. I wanted to mention him as one of the cheaper wide receivers. If you want to try to get a different from, Curtis Samuel, there are a couple there. He's the other guy, like kind of below the 3K or around below 4K. Van Jefferson as well. He just runs a ton of routes like for the Rams. And if Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods predictably are really very popular, then that's going to be the issue. So I think that those guys make a lot of sense there. We talked about Metcalf and Lockett. Lockett's kind of banged up. I'm going back to Ridley. I'm doing it. I'm playing Ridley until he hits because I know it's going to happen eventually, and it should happen against the football team who have been freaking terrible against wide receivers this year. So he's been I think that we're at a point where it's not going to be Ridley and Pitts probably in the same game that they like blow up or have that blow up game. So I think an off Ridley play with a McLaurin, again, people are going to be playing Curtis Samuel. So I think it's a perfect, skinny stack. Curtis Samuel and Ridley, Curtis Samuel and Kyle Pitts. Terry McLaurin, I think, will also see reduced ownership because of the fact that people are going to play Curtis Samuel. They're going to be like, I don't want, and Antonio Gibson's pretty popular as well. So Terry McLaurin, do not forget about him. He is the alpha in the offense, and he also is benefiting from the Falcons matchup as well.
Yeah, I like that KJ Osborne call. That's interesting. That wasn't something that I had thought.
No, it wasn't something I was initially on.
Yeah.
I wasn't on it initially either, and I was like, I was looking more at this like cover 3 stuff because it popped up to me. I was talking about Joe Burrow and I liked his matchup. I was like, oh, this guy was ripping cover 3. Kirk Cousins is really good against cover 3. And yeah, I was like, zone defense, like slot receivers eat, they eat over the middle of the field. And Osborne has been the slot receiver. So he was pretty popular. I think last week was finally the week he was chalky, or chalkier. Of course, he busts. So I think this is a week to go back to him, especially because he's been good for 2 out of 3 weeks. And Tyler Conklin's a little banged up. So Osborne is definitely interesting.
Yeah. There's enough production to go around in that offense. And last week was a Tyler Conklin week. So maybe it swings right back. Some other cheap receivers that I'm interested in. I wrote up Brandon Ayuk. It seems like he's finally got his role back in the 49ers offense. George Kittle is banged up and he's just really cheap. He's 5K. We know he's, has the talent of like a high 6K receiver. He's an absolute baller. So I definitely am interested in Ayuk this week. And then Corey Davis revenge against the Titans. I think that's an interesting way to kind of differentiate your Derrick Henry rosters, to pair him with Corey Davis. He's cheap. No Elijah Moore this week. And I feel like the Jets are going to want to get him a touchdown against his former team.
Yes, Corey Davis. People hate Corey Davis. He had the quietest 10 targets last week. People freak out about 10 targets, but not Corey Davis 10 targets. So I like that call. Dude, I can't believe we made it this far and not have talked about your boy, Will Fuller, at 4,800. Dude, he popped out all over the place. When I was looking at doing my DFS cheat sheet, again, he ruled the skies, quote unquote, is what I wrote in the article. Ruled the skies with 148 air yards in week 3. We saw Jalen Waddle lead the way in targets, but Will Fuller had encouraging usage, 69% route participation, 8 targets, and he was seeing the targets downfield, which is the most important part. And to mention it as well, Ayuk, we talked about this on the Injury Report podcast. Deebo Samuel out-targeted him. Ayuk saw more air yards. So Ayuk was kind of reclaiming his role from last year where he was the air yards leader, and the end zone target leader, which he also saw 2 end zone targets last week as well. So the 49ers offense eats when one of these guys is hurt or banged up. And right now, Kittle is the guy that's banged up. So Ayuk makes a ton of sense. And Will Fuller, man, Will Fuller and Jonathan Taylor skinny stacks all freaking day. All freaking day. Like Will Fuller has a 40-point ceiling. We all know it. We've all seen it. And I think this week in the dome, I think it's in the dome. I need to double check that. Is it in the dome or is it at home?
No, it's at Miami.
Okay. Well, in the
He's at
heat,
home. He's at home.
in the heat, yeah, it's at his home. Yeah, not in the dome though. But in his heat, Will Fuller. Yeah, I'm playing Will Fuller. You're playing Will Fuller, right, Jared? I mean, like, I feel like I don't have to convince you that.
Will Fuller. Yeah, he was getting the targets too in crunch time at the end of the fourth quarter, overtime.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't catch the touchdown because that means he'll catch a touchdown this week. That's the move.
Yeah. No, I am all for Will Fuller this week. I think we did a good job with these receivers. Anyone else sticking out to you?
The man of the hour. So I'm obviously big on the Dallas team. So stacking Dak, Cooper, Lamb. I mean, Cooper and Lamb are just both underpriced, so you can really fit them in, honestly, any type of build. JC Horn is not going to play for the Carolina Panthers. He's hurt. So I think either of those guys as one-off plays make a lot of sense. It's Robbie Anderson. Like everything is pointing
Squeaky
to Robbie
wheel?
Anderson. Yeah, dude, squeaky wheel gets the grease. They paid the guy. There's no McCaffrey. There's no Dan Arnold. Like everything is working in his favor. There's like a million reasons why you should play Robbie Anderson because he sucked. Like there are no statistical reasons why you should play him because he's been absolutely terrible. He's at 11 targets, less than Terrace Marshall, but he's on the field. He's running routes. And he's been, staying after practice with Sam Darnold. He makes sense as a comeback option. And I think the biggest thing is Trevon Diggs has been locking down number one wide receivers. He just has been. Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Devontae Smith. Like, no, he wasn't covering all those players, but every single game that the Dallas Cowboys have played in, the most productive receiver has been the number 2 guy. And Robbie Anderson, at least based on a snap percentage, route run percentage, has been the number 2 guy for the Carolina Panthers. So Robbie, he had a good week 1. So we know that he did catch a 57-yard touchdown. Like he's done it before. So it's not like outlandish to think he could have a big game. This isn't a galaxy brain. Like, oh, like Robbie Anderson, like who is this guy? Like we know who he is and we know he can put up big numbers. So I like Robbie Anderson. I also like Terrace Marshall for all the same reasons. I know we saw his route percentage also increase after the McCaffrey injury. So I think they're prime options of bringbacks for the Dallas stacks with Robbie Anderson or Terrace Marshall. It also plays off DJ Moore, who is the 4th highest rostered receiver in our rostership projections. I'm honestly fine with fading DJ Moore. I mean, the guy doesn't score touchdowns. Like, I'm sorry. Like, he doesn't score touchdowns. So what am I going to get burned by, 8 catches for like 100? Like, I don't think he's going to bury you, especially if they decide to use Diggs on him. So I'm going to be fine playing some of those ancillary Carolina receivers in my Dallas stacks.
Yep. What about Allen Robinson? Can we play him this week?
Yeah, I mean, I like Allen Robinson. I just don't know who the quarterback. Like, I don't know who the quarterback is. I think he'll have a bounce back game. I like him more in season long leagues. But if it's him or OBJ, like the same price, like I'm gonna play OBJ. So that's my. We're
gonna need
we'll see.
to save money somewhere to build these rosters, and he's cheap.
All right, tight end. My specialty in routes run. Okay, yeah, it's easy, guys. You play Will Dissly because George Kittle is out, or Gerald Everett's probably not going to play. So Will Dissly is your prime pay down option at 2,600. He's been a top 5 tight end before with Russell Wilson, so I literally have no hesitation just sliding him in there. He's playing in a high scoring game. Tyler Lockett is banged up. I think it makes way too much sense, honestly, to play Will Dissly. I'm surprised that it'll be interesting to see how his rostership percentage shakes out when we get the updates. And once we get official word that Gerald Everett will not be playing, Cole Kmet ranked really high in terms of route participation. I reference route participation because CJ Uzoma, 77% routes run the last 3 weeks. And that's why he had a big game. Like you want to chase routes run at the position. And that's what you see Cole Kmet and our guy, Jared, Dawson Knox.
Let's go.
3,600 currently ranks 9th in the NFL in total routes run. Those are my 3 like bottom end tight ends because I think that the top ones are obviously pretty obvious. Kelsey, you should have to work your lineup around it. But those are my 3 guys. Like Knox, I absolutely freaking love. I think you can stack him if you want to double stack with Allen, I think Diggs and Knox is kind of an interesting way, avoiding the Beasley, Sanders tier and paying all the way down from Knox and paying up for Stephon Diggs, I think is kind of interesting. Disley, again, he's got the opportunity, and Cole Kmet also has a lot of opportunity and has a great matchup against the Lions.
Yeah. Also for the cheap guys, I think if you are not playing Derrick Henry, then Anthony Ferkser makes some sense at
there we
3.1K.
go.
He practiced fully this week, and looks like the Ferk Daddy is back. I
Daddy's
have
back.
him on way too many best ball rosters, so I'm praying that he finds the paint this week. But he makes a lot of sense. I mean, from like a game strategy, game theory standpoint, if he scores any touchdowns, it just directly hurts every other roster that you're competing with, basically.
Yeah, I think because it's so weird because we were so high on the Ferk Daddy, like going in, we're like, oh man, this guy's gonna be like a star, and then they like all the receivers got hurt, or they brought in all these receivers, and he's like not even playing. We're like, what's going on? But yeah, like he's probably I would play Ferkser first before any of those other Titans wide receivers, like 100%, because people are just looking at the wide receiver position and be like, oh, like this is the guy. But like if you look at like a production standpoint, Burks has probably produced more than all those guys already in his career. Like he's actually shown what he's been able to do. And he's also really been more of a pseudo slot wide receiver anyway, even though he is technically a tight end. So I can't imagine, I would imagine with all the injuries they're having, they're like, hey, Ferk Daddy, like you're playing slot wide receiver this week, like get ready. So I would not, it would be nice to see how his routes run pop out on the chart next week. It'll be like, I'm sure that'll be like Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Anthony Ferkser.
Let's go. The real big tight end.
The real big
three.
The real big three.
Kittle, get out of here.
Yeah, George Kittle is all sorts of banged up. Mention Kyle Pitts. Again, one of Ridley or Pitts is gonna break out. Like it's there, everything is there, the usage is there, the matchup is there. It's just a matter of can Matt Ryan just get his way to producing somebody good for fantasy. It's like what we're just hoping for. Any other tight ends to mention? I know Gesicki's had a lot of targets, but I don't know, man. Gesicki's always just been super up and down. Chasing him seems kind of. I just like Knox a lot. Knox is my guy. Knox needs to sponsor this stream because every time we talk about him, he scores a touchdown. So Dawson Knox, lock of the week, touchdown. Jared, any other tight end takes or just your stack of the week? Whatever. As we wrap this up.
I just pray that we're not a week late on Dawson Knox week. That's it for that. But Tyler Higbee's the only guy we didn't mention. And before he got banged out, I think he got a thigh bruise or something, and that kind of knocked him out of the Bucs game. But he looked like he was on pace to score 25 DraftKings points.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he did not. But I would go right back to him. He's cheap. And previously, I've loved playing tight ends against the Chiefs. I hate that Dallas Goedert is so expensive.
And then he's literally a full-time tight end.
Yeah, it's just that is just ridiculous. And I don't want to play Zach Ertz. It's like a vomit play.
Understandably.
But I might have to think about it.
Yep, understandably. I guess we'll just hit on defense real quick. If you're playing cash games, I think Lions is just kind of locked and loaded. Whether it's Fields, whether it's Andy Dalton, you're gonna play the Lions DST. I thought other interesting guys were Colts DST, Cardinals, and then the football team and Rams as expensive defenses that people aren't playing that I think are actually really they are good in real life, or I've seen them be good in real life. You can envision a scenario where the Falcons offensive line is horrible. It is absolutely atrocious. So I could see the football team defensive line overpowering them. And then the Rams defense is also really good. Playing defenses in shootouts works. And if this game duds out, if Kyler Murray throws a bunch of picks, Kyler Murray also just throws picks randomly all the time. He's not this precise passer. We love him for fantasy because he runs and he kind of YOLOs a little bit, but he gives up points. I played the Jaguars defense last week at 2K and they got me 8 points. I was thrilled. So if you're going to try to be a little bit different, I think that the football team and Rams DSTs are interesting to pay up options. The Bills is a chalkier option, obviously, because they're playing Davis Mills, but any other DSTs that kind of pop out to you?
If we're paying up, I'll be interested in the Saints. Anytime I can play defense against Jason Garrett, I am going to be all about that. The Packers against Ben Roethlisberger is going to be interesting. I'm sure you saw the clip of Ben like falling over himself.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great, Bob.
Fantastic. Not great, Bob is right. The Browns are interesting. Their defensive line went bonkers last week. I know it was the Bears O-line, but Vikings offensive line, not that great. And the Cowboys also are kind of interesting. I mean, Sam Darnold's looked awesome, but so is the Cowboys defense. So that is kind of where my head's at defense-wise.
Cool. All right. What is your stack of the week? What are you going with?
Well, I think it's got to be the game with the highest total, the Rams Cardinals game. I'm going to try to build around that. I think Kyler Murray is going to be my guy at quarterback this week. And then I might try to save some salary and go away from D-Hop. He's going to be dealing with a lot of Jalen Ramsey. So I might pair Kyler with Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, or Chase Edmonds. Probably not two of those guys just because you're hoping for rushing touchdowns with Kyler. And then you can run it back with one of the Rams or two of the Rams, Higbee, Kupp, Woods. Pick your poison there, praying that Robert Woods is not actually dead. Maybe he is hanging out with Matthew Stafford this weekend.
Maybe they let him sit at brunch. Maybe they let him sit at the breakfast table this week.
Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense. Like Robert Woods is being targeted at the same rate as he was last year. I mean, I know that Kupp is seeing a lot more, but
that's the issue. It's like Kupp is just way Robert Woods is just Woods isn't like playing bad. It's just like Cooper Kupp is just like playing so much better, and that's kind of what the distinction is. Woods has not been bad. It's just Cooper Kupp has just been so damn good is really like the point that I think you were trying to make, which I think makes a lot of sense. So you shouldn't be super low on Woods just because Kupp is just balling the F out. For me, I'm going to go back with Dak, double stack with Cooper and Lamb, and then bring it back with Robbie Anderson. I think it's a nice 4 mini stack. And then my skinny stacks I like Jonathan Taylor and Will Fuller, and then the OBJ and KJ Osborne as some of my skinny stacks to stack it up. I also like DeAndre Swift a lot as well as my locked in running back, because if his rostership stays below 5%, I'm going to play him everywhere because the dude he's RB3 in PPR. He's a friggin' PPR machine. So continue to play those guys. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate it. I'm going to going to a Jonas Brothers concert in an hour or so. So that'll be fun.
Let's go.
Yeah. So Jared, thank you all for joining. Jared, any final words?
I don't think so, man. Let's win some money this week. I want to see some screenshots out of you.
No more Justin Fields this week. We're gonna win. We're gonna win money with Dak and Kyler, Josh Allen. It's gonna be a great time. Thank you all for tuning in. Go check out our work at pff.com. We'll be back next week, same time as always.